God's Blueprint for Wealth. 10 Biblical Laws for Prosperity That Lasts. Introduction, Unlocking Timeless Secrets to Wealth Building. By Gary Thompson. In today's fast-paced, profit-driven world, people are searching not just for more income but for meaning, stability, and purpose in how they build wealth. Headlines boast of quick riches, side hustles, and digital gold rushes, yet millions still feel uncertain, overwhelmed, and spiritually disconnected from their financial goals. That's where this book comes in. What if the answers to lasting wealth and purpose weren't new, but ancient? What if the principles that create financial freedom today were already written centuries ago in the pages of the Bible? This book, thoroughly researched and composed by Gary Thompson, explores 10 powerful biblical truths that reveal how ordinary people can build extraordinary wealth by aligning their financial practices with God's principles. Drawing on timeless scripture, compelling modern-day examples, and practical application, Gary weaves together a guide that goes beyond budgeting or investing. It speaks to your spirit, your character, and your calling. Each chapter reveals a biblical truth about money and wealth, such as: God is the ultimate source of wealth. Hard work and diligence lead to prosperity. Generosity unlocks increase. Contentment guards against greed. Wisdom and trust in God lead to true abundance. But this is not a theoretical book. You'll walk through real-life stories from biblical heroes to modern entrepreneurs who applied these truths and watched their lives transform. You'll learn how to build wealth with integrity. Leverage faith and wisdom in business. Use money as a tool for impact. Trust God as your provider, strategist, and financial partner. Whether you are starting from nothing, rebuilding after a loss, or managing increasing success, this book will serve as your spiritual and financial compass. As the founder of 10X Branding and Marketing and a committed believer in faith-based business leadership, Gary Thompson combines decades of entrepreneurial experience with in-depth biblical study. His mission is simple: to help people grow financially free, purpose-driven, and kingdom-minded. This book is more than a guide, it's a movement. A call back to divine alignment, where wealth is no longer pursued with anxiety but built with wisdom, faith, and purpose. Are you ready to build wealth the way God intended? Let's begin. Chapter 1, The Source: Wealth Begins with God. Biblical Principle, Deuteronomy 8:18, God gives the power to get wealth. Story idea: a single mother starts a cleaning business from nothing, guided by prayer and divine wisdom. Modern lesson: recognize divine purpose and seek God's guidance before starting a business or career. Chapter 2, Money Isn't Evil, but Loving It Is. Biblical Principle, 1 Timothy 6:10, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Story idea: a young crypto investor gains millions but loses peace, relationships, and purpose, then finds clarity through faith. Modern lesson: use wealth as a servant, not a master. Money without mission leads to moral collapse. Chapter 3, Blessed to be a Blessing, Godly Wealth in Action. Biblical Principle, Abraham and Solomon were rich and righteous, Genesis 13:2, 1 Kings 10:23. Story idea: a real estate mogul uses his wealth to build housing for single fathers and their kids. Modern lesson: biblical prosperity always ties back to others being uplifted. Chapter 4, Don't trust the bag, trust the provider. Biblical Principle, Proverbs 11:28, he who trusts in riches will fall. Story idea: a tech startup crashes, and the founder loses everything until he rebuilds, this time anchored in faith. Modern lesson: trusting in wealth leads to anxiety, trusting in God leads to peace and restoration. Chapter 5, Stewardship over Ownership. Biblical Principle, 1 Timothy 6:17-19, be rich in good deeds and generous. Story idea: a social media influencer learns to use her platform to fund missions, scholarships, and mental health work. Modern lesson: being a faithful steward brings lasting impact and multiplies influence. Chapter 6, The Deceitfulness of Riches. Biblical Principle, Matthew 19:24, it's hard for the rich to enter the kingdom. Story idea: a lawyer builds a firm but neglects his family and soul until a crisis brings him back to faith. Modern lesson: riches that isolate you from people and purpose are dangerous, beware of hidden costs. Chapter 7, Store eternal treasures first. Biblical principle, Matthew 6:19-21, lay up treasures in heaven. Story idea, a successful entrepreneur sells his company and shifts focus to global literacy and youth mentoring. Modern lesson, investments in people and eternity outlast financial markets. Chapter 8, The Tithing Test, Unlocking Overflow. Biblical principle, Malachi 3:10, bring the tithe and receive divine provision. Story idea, a couple on the brink of bankruptcy begins tithing and sees supernatural provision. Modern lesson, tithing builds discipline, opens doors, and aligns money with mission. Chapter 9, Escape financial slavery, debt. Biblical principle, Proverbs 22:7, the borrower is slave to the lender. Story idea, a college grad with $100,000 in student loans learns to live simply and build wealth with cash. Modern lesson, debt delays destiny. Financial freedom starts with contentment and strategic payoff plans. Chapter 10, The Wisdom of Saving and Planning. Biblical principle, Proverbs 21:20, the wise store up oil, fools spend it fast. Story idea, a family man uses envelope budgeting, minimalism, and passive income to retire early and mentor others. Modern lesson, wealth is built daily through discipline, planning, and vision. Chapter 1, The Source, Wealth Begins with God. Based on Deuteronomy 8:18, but remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth. Page 1, The Breaking Point. Sharon Jenkins stared at the clock on the wall of her tiny apartment kitchen. It was 3:17 a.m. She had just finished mopping the floor of a diner in South Dallas and returned home to find a final notice from her landlord. One more missed rent payment, and she'd be evicted with her 7-year-old son, Marcus, asleep in the next room. There was nothing left to cut. No child support, no savings, no help from family. She felt powerless, ashamed, and angry at God. "If you're really there," she whispered, "why am I stuck like this?" It was in that desperate moment that something shifted. Not outside, but inside. She remembered a Bible verse her grandmother used to quote, "God gives the power to get wealth. Not just daily bread but the power to produce." Sharon had always been faithful in church, but she had never been taught how faith and finances could connect in real life. That night, she cried until sunrise and prayed one of the boldest prayers of her life. "God, show me how to build. I don't want handouts. I want strategy." Page 2, The Spark. 3 days later, while scrolling job ads, she came across a YouTube video, How I Started a Cleaning Business with $200. It felt like a divine nudge. She watched the whole thing twice. That weekend, she used her last paycheck to buy uniforms, print flyers, and get basic insurance. Her first client came from a church friend. The second, from a cold call email to a local real estate agent. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was hers. Every night she prayed over her supply bag, asked God for wisdom, and treated each job like it was a mansion. She began keeping a journal titled, "God, You Gave Me This." Inside, she logged every business lesson she learned, every dollar earned, and every prayer answered. Within 6 months, Sharon went from mopping floors for $9 an hour to earning $4,000/month on her own schedule. She didn't see it right away, but God had answered her prayer. He didn't drop money from the sky. He gave her the power to produce wealth through wisdom, strategy, and grit. Page 3, What the Bible Really Says About Wealth. Too many believers think of wealth as either a sign of greed or a stroke of luck. But Deuteronomy 8:18 flips that thinking. "But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth." Here's what this reveals. God is not against wealth, He's against forgetfulness and pride. The phrase, ability to produce, speaks of strategy, opportunity, and skill, not lottery winnings. Wealth is a partnership between God's provision and human obedience. In Sharon's story, she didn't sit still waiting on a miracle. She acted in faith. God brought the vision, she brought the work ethic. This principle applies to anyone. Wealth is not inherited, found, or stumbled upon, it is built, with God's wisdom. Page 4, Modern application, start where you are. You don't need $1 million to apply this principle. You need a clear prayer. Ask God for clarity and creative ideas. A problem to solve. Every business begins with meeting a need. A willing heart. God multiplies what's placed in his hands. Sharon didn't have investors or degrees. What she had was hunger, humility, and faith. Her story proves this truth. God gives ability, but you must activate it. Today, Sharon leads a 6-figure residential and commercial cleaning company. She trains single moms across the state and teaches workshops on financial stewardship through her church. Her story began with a cry. It grew through obedience. And it continues as a living testimony. Page 5, Reflection plus Activation. Biblical truth. God is not just the provider of money, he is the source of how to produce it. Questions to reflect on. What problems around me could become an opportunity? Have I asked God for strategy or just a breakthrough? What skills, passions, or experiences can I leverage for income? Action step. Write out your own Sharon prayer. Lord, I know you give the power to produce wealth. Open my eyes to the skills I've overlooked. Give me courage to take action. Let what's in my hand become a seed you multiply. Remember, you don't need more money. You need more clarity on where your wealth is already hiding. Chapter 2, Money isn't evil, but loving it is. Based on 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Page 1, The Fast Life. Darius Clark was a college dropout turned crypto millionaire. At just 24, he owned a penthouse in Miami, a Tesla Model X, and a wardrobe filled with designer labels. He had grown up in a small Georgia town, raised by a praying grandmother and a factory-working mother. But once he started seeing $80,000 a day from online trading, he forgot everything but the chase. He told himself it was just a season. He would give back later. Right now, he had to build generational wealth. Parties, women, fake friends, it all came with the package. The thrill of watching his numbers rise became his religion. But then came the crash. In under a week, one wrong investment wiped out nearly 90% of his portfolio. Partners ghosted. Creditors called. People he paid to stick around vanished. The penthouse lease expired. Darius found himself back in his hometown broke, humiliated, and spiritually numb. He opened his grandmother's worn Bible one night, looking for peace. The first verse he saw was scribbled and underlined in red. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Tears fell. He finally got it. Money wasn't the problem, his obsession was. Page 2, When good things become gods. The verse didn't say money was evil. It said the love of money leads to evil. Here's what that means. Money is a tool. Like fire, it can warm or burn. Love of money warps decision-making, kills relationships, and turns people into commodities. True wealth is never just material, it's spiritual, relational, and eternal. Darius had made money his god. It told him when to sleep, how to think, and who mattered. The crash wasn't punishment, it was mercy. It forced him to re-evaluate what he worshipped. He began rebuilding his life not from a chart or stock pick but from scripture. He started volunteering at a youth mentorship center. He launched a podcast about financial literacy and integrity. He even helped his church form a fund to support local entrepreneurs. Money was no longer his identity, it was his assignment. Page 3, Biblical Insight. Check the heart, not the bank. The Bible is filled with wealthy people. God used Job, Abraham, Lydia, Joseph of Arimathea. But in every case, they didn't serve money. They served God with their money. Jesus warned, you cannot serve both God and money, Matthew 6:24. Here are signs you may be loving money more than God. You obsess over making it, but rarely pray about managing it. You measure success only by material outcomes. You hoard it out of fear instead of giving from faith. You compromise values just to gain more of it. God doesn't mind you having wealth, he minds wealth having you. Page 4, Modern Application, Redefining Wealth. After the crash, Darius created 3 new rules for himself. Purpose first. Any business deal must align with purpose, not just profit. People over paychecks. He would never trade relationships for revenue again. Peace over pressure. If it robs his peace, it's too expensive no matter the return. He slowly rebuilt, consulting small businesses and churches on digital finance. He made less than before, but he slept better. He laughed more. He gave more. He was rich in a way he had never known, rich in faith, rich in impact. You don't have to lose everything like Darius to learn this. You can ask yourself now. Do I use money, or does it use me? Am I building a kingdom or feeding my ego? Would I still follow God if wealth wasn't part of the package? Page 5, Reflection plus Activation. Biblical truth. Money is a servant, not a savior. The love of it corrupts, the proper use of it blesses. Questions to reflect on. In what ways has money influenced your identity or decisions? Are you chasing wealth or chasing wisdom? Could you walk away from a profitable opportunity if it violated your values? Action step. Write down your personal money values code, a set of 3 principles that will guide how you earn, give, and spend. Pray over it and commit to it. Sample code. I will never make money at the expense of integrity. I will honor God first with every dollar. I will value people more than possessions. Remember, God doesn't mind you having wealth. He just doesn't want it to have your heart. Chapter 3, Blessed to be a blessing. Based on Genesis 12:2, I will bless you, and you will be a blessing. Page 1, The Turnaround. Vanessa Alvarez wasn't supposed to make it. Raised in a rough neighborhood in El Paso, she saw poverty like most kids see sidewalks. It was just part of the scenery. Her single mom worked 2 jobs. The lights got shut off twice a year. Christmas gifts came from donation bins. But Vanessa had something special, a mind for numbers and a heart for people. She worked her way through a state college with scholarships and summer jobs, eventually earning a CPA license. By 35, she owned her own tax and financial planning firm. Clients trusted her. Her business thrived. But something felt off. I was making 6 figures and living like I had arrived, she admitted years later, but something in me stayed empty. That changed when she volunteered to teach a budgeting class at her church. At first, it was just a favor. But then she noticed the tears in people's eyes when they saw hope for the first time in their finances. That one class grew into a workshop, then into a local program. Vanessa had found her true purpose, to use her blessing to bless others. Page 2. The biblical pattern of overflow. When God blessed Abraham in Genesis 12:2, he didn't say, I will bless you so you can be rich. He said, I will bless you, and you will be a blessing. This is the divine pattern of provision. God gives. He blesses his people with more than just enough. You grow. Through stewardship, discipline, and wisdom, your wealth increases. Others benefit. The overflow of your blessing becomes a bridge to help others. This was never about hoarding. God didn't just want Abraham to enjoy the blessing, he wanted the nations to benefit from it. Wealth, in God's kingdom, is meant to move. Page 3, When wealth becomes purpose. Vanessa realized something during a prayer walk. She wasn't just good at finance, she was called to use her gift for kingdom impact. So, she made a bold move. She carved out a percentage of her firm's annual profits for 2 things. Financial education for underserved communities. Micro-grants for single mothers starting businesses. It was risky at first, especially during tax season when every dollar counted. But the results were undeniable. Her firm gained more referrals, her team became more mission-minded, and God continued to increase her reach. Vanessa said, when I made the shift from I'm blessed to I'm blessed to bless, everything changed. Clients didn't just see me as a consultant. They saw me as a bridge. Page 4, Modern application. You don't need millions to be a blessing. Too often, people think generosity is only for the wealthy. But blessing others doesn't always start with money. It could be sharing your skills or knowledge for free. Mentoring a younger person in your industry. Giving time, not just tithes. Providing job opportunities to those overlooked. Whether you're a mechanic, a mom, a barber, or a CEO, if God has given you something, He's trusted you to share it. The widow in 1 Kings gave her last meal to Elijah and her jar never ran out. The boy with 2 fish and 5 loaves gave what he had and it fed a crowd. Vanessa gave her skill and it unlocked dozens of destinies. You are not just blessed. You are positioned. Page 5, Reflection plus Activation. Biblical truth. God blesses us so that through us, He can bless others. Questions to reflect on. What blessings, skills, finances, or time do I currently have that could serve others? Have I viewed my success as a responsibility or just a reward? What is one area where I could be a blessing this week? Action step. List 3 ways you could use your current resources, no matter how small, to bless someone this month. Choose one and act on it this week. Sample ideas. Offer 1 free consultation to a small business owner in need. Take a struggling student out for lunch and give advice. Donate 10% of a bonus to a family or ministry in need. Remember, God's blessing is never meant to stop with you. It's meant to flow through you. Chapter 4, Stewardship over Ownership. Based on Psalm 24:1, the earth is the Lord's, and everything in it. Page 1, The False Owner. Marcus Lynn was a real estate investor with properties across 3 states. At 42, he had a net worth of $12 million, a gated home in Scottsdale, and a carefully curated image of control. Every deal was planned. Every dollar tracked. Marcus believed the key to success was simple: own everything, trust no one. But when a freak storm flooded 2 of his top-producing apartment buildings and his insurance company delayed payments, Marcus panicked. Tenants left. Contractors quit mid-job. Banks came calling. In the chaos, he met Pastor Drew, a tenant advocate who helped families relocate. "You think you're an owner," Pastor Drew told him bluntly, "but everything you have belongs to God. You're just managing it." Marcus didn't appreciate the comment. But that night, unable to sleep, he opened a Bible from a tenant's abandoned bookshelf. The first verse he read: "The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it." It hit him like a freight train. He wasn't the owner. He was just the manager. Page 2, The Steward's Mindset. In the kingdom of God, there are no true owners. Only stewards. A steward is someone entrusted with something that belongs to another, managing it wisely and faithfully. Jesus taught this in multiple parables. The parable of the talents, Matthew 25. The unjust steward, Luke 16. The faithful manager, Luke 12. All point to this truth: God owns everything. You manage what He entrusts to you. This perspective shifts everything. You hold wealth with open hands. You seek God's will for what to do with it. You stop competing and start cooperating with heaven. Marcus realized he wasn't being punished, he was being invited. Invited to surrender his illusion of control and take on a new identity: kingdom steward. Page 3, Stewardship in Action. Marcus changed how he ran his properties. He began viewing them as ministries, not just assets. He set up fair housing workshops for tenants. Started a scholarship fund for kids in his buildings. Gave a portion of each property's profit to local shelters. As he took on the role of steward, favor followed. Deals came to him. Repairs that once took weeks resolved in days. He began to pray over his buildings, not just for profits, but for peace. "When I gave God ownership," he later said, "I finally had peace even in loss." Stewardship didn't make him less responsible, it made him more purposeful. Page 4, Modern Application, Living as a Steward. We often say, "My house, my business, my money," but the Bible teaches it all belongs to God. Your role is not to own, but to manage on His behalf. This mindset leads to greater trust. You don't panic when things go wrong, you consult the owner. Better decisions. You ask God how to use His resources. More joy, you aren't enslaved to what you own. You don't need millions to be a steward. A mother managing a tight grocery budget can honor God in her stewardship. A college student with only $50 can still tithe and bless. A manager at a job can steward influence, not just income. Stewardship isn't about how much you have, it's about how you handle what you've been given. Page 5, Reflection plus Activation. Biblical truth. You don't own anything, God does. You've been entrusted to manage it wisely. Questions to reflect on. Have I been treating what I have as mine or God's? What area of my finances or possessions do I need to surrender? How would my life change if I truly lived like a steward? Action step. Choose one area of your life, money, time, property, relationships, and write out a stewardship plan for it. Include how you will honor God with it, what it would look like to manage it for His purposes, a goal to serve someone else with it this month. Sample declaration. Lord, I surrender everything I have to you. Help me to manage your resources with wisdom, integrity, and generosity. Remember, when you stop acting like the owner, you open the door to God's favor. He can trust a steward more than he can bless a hoarder. Chapter 5, Tithing is a test of trust. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty. Malachi 3:10. Page 1, The Struggle to Let Go. Jasmine was a brilliant ICU nurse in Atlanta. After working double shifts during the pandemic, she had finally paid off her student loans. Her new condo had granite countertops, her credit was excellent, and yet, every month felt tight. She had grown up in church but had never really taken tithing seriously. God understands, she used to tell herself. He knows I've got bills. I give when I can. Then one Sunday, her pastor gave a message titled, The Only Place God Says, Test Me. He read from Malachi 3:10, explaining that the tithe, a tenth of our income, wasn't about God needing money. It was about us showing we trusted Him. Jasmine squirmed in her seat. The message felt personal. Still, she wrestled with the question that haunted many believers. What if I don't have enough? Page 2, What tithing really tests. Tithing is more than just a giving principle, it's a trust test. God asks, will you give me the first 10% and trust that I will bless the rest? Throughout the Bible, the number 10 is used as a symbol of testing. 10 commandments equals test of obedience. 10 plagues equals test of Pharaoh's heart. 10 lepers healed equals test of gratitude. 10 virgins equals test of readiness. Tithing is the only place in Scripture where God says, test me. Malachi 3:10 doesn't promise luxury, but it does promise provision. See if I will not open the windows of heaven. Protection, I will rebuke the devourer for your sake. Overflow, that there will not be room enough to receive it. Jasmine decided to try it. That next paycheck, she tithed 10% before her mortgage, before groceries, before anything else. She felt scared, but free. Page 3, God's math is not like ours. 2 weeks later, her car broke down. Panic tried to rush in, but this time she paused and prayed. That night, her neighbor, an elderly man she sometimes helped, offered to give her his old car. It's just sitting in my garage, he said. You've been good to me. I want you to have it. Tears filled her eyes. Then her manager called, a surprise bonus for pandemic frontline workers. 3 times what she had tithed. From that month forward, Jasmine tithed faithfully. She didn't get rich overnight, but the stress lifted. Her budget stretched. Things broke less. She was promoted twice in 1 year. More than financial change, Jasmine experienced a heart shift. She wasn't giving out of guilt, she was giving out of trust. Page 4, Modern wealth builders who tithe. Some of the world's most generous givers are also among the wealthiest. David Green, founder of Hobby Lobby, tithes on 90% of his income. Truett Cathy, founder of Chick-fil-A, closed on Sundays and gave millions to missions. Ledernu, an industrialist, gave away 90% and lived on 10%. These men weren't just wealthy, they were God-trusting stewards who understood the tithe wasn't about obligation. It was about inviting God into their finances. In today's world, tithing might seem counterintuitive, especially in a recession, with inflation rising. But that's when it matters most. Tithing isn't about how much you have. It's about who you believe is your provider. Page 5, Reflection plus Activation. Biblical truth. Tithing isn't a money issue, it's a trust issue. God doesn't need your money. He wants your heart. Questions to reflect on. Have I been treating God as my financial partner or as an afterthought? Am I giving Him my first, or my leftovers? What blessings might be waiting on the other side of obedience? Action step. For the next 90 days, commit to tithing 10% of your income. Track. What changes in your mindset? How your needs are met? Any unexpected blessings? Sample prayer. Father, I give you what's already yours. I trust you to provide, protect, and prosper. Teach me to be faithful in the little so you can trust me with more. Remember, God doesn't ask us to give because He needs money, He asks because He wants to build our faith and bless our lives. Chapter 6, Diligence brings increase. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. Proverbs 10:4. Page 1, The allure of instant success. Gregory Nelson was always on the lookout for the next big thing. He jumped from one business idea to another, convinced that the shortcut to wealth was just around the corner. His latest venture was an online drop-shipping store. He bought a course that promised to make him 6 figures in a year, but after 6 months of little progress, he was frustrated. I've put in all this time and money, and for what? He thought. Why isn't this working? Gregory had put in hours of effort but had never stayed consistent. He would dive headfirst into a project, but when results didn't come quickly, he would quit or jump to something else. His bank account remained stagnant, and his dreams of wealth felt out of reach. One day, his friend Malik, a successful landscaper, invited him over for coffee. Malik shared a story of how he built his business from scratch, working 12-hour days for years before seeing significant profits. Gregory listened in disbelief. How could success take that long? Page 2, The Diligence Principle. Malik's story echoed the wisdom in Proverbs 10:4, Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. The Bible is full of examples where God blesses those who persist in doing good work. From the parable of the talents, Matthew 25, to the Proverbs about the ant's work ethic, God honors consistent, diligent effort. In the book of Ecclesiastes, it says, "Whoever watches the wind will not plant, whoever looks at the clouds will not reap." Ecclesiastes 11:4. This reflects the idea that waiting for perfect conditions or a get-rich-quick opportunity is a recipe for stagnation. Wealth building requires consistent, focused effort. Diligence isn't about working endlessly, it's about being intentional and putting in the work with a clear vision and steady focus. Page 3, The Power of Small Steps. Malik's landscaping business didn't take off overnight. He didn't try to cut corners or look for shortcuts. Instead, he did the small things every day, showing up on time, providing excellent service, and treating customers like family. Slowly, he built a reputation. His hard work wasn't flashy, but it was steady. 1 year after he started, Malik hired his first employee. The year after that, he expanded into lawn care equipment rental. 5 years in, his business had grown beyond anything he had imagined, and it all started with diligence. Gregory realized that success wasn't about finding a quick way to make money, it was about doing the work, day after day. He started applying the same principle to his drop-shipping store. Instead of abandoning it at the first sign of failure, he focused on improving the small details, better product selection, improved customer service, and clearer marketing. Slowly but surely, his sales began to increase. Page 4, Modern Wealth Builders Who Model Diligence. Some of today's most successful people attribute their wealth to consistent effort over time. Warren Buffett, one of the world's wealthiest investors, began buying stocks at age 11 and spent decades building his wealth with careful, strategic investments. Oprah Winfrey worked her way from a local news anchor to a media mogul by consistently improving her craft and building trust with her audience. Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, went from selling fax machines door-to-door to building a multi-billion-dollar company by persistently improving her product and business approach. These individuals didn't rely on luck, they focused on mastery of their craft and showed up consistently, year after year. Page 5, Reflection plus Activation. Biblical truth. Diligence is the key to increasing your wealth. It's not about working harder, it's about working smarter and staying faithful to the process. Questions to reflect on. Have I been looking for shortcuts, or am I committed to doing the work consistently? What areas of my life require more diligence and focus to see progress? How can I improve my daily habits to move me closer to my goals? Action step. Choose one area of your life or business where you've been inconsistent. For the next 30 days, commit to doing something small but meaningful every day in that area, whether it's saving a set amount, working on a skill, or improving your business operations. Sample prayer. Lord, help me to be faithful in the small tasks. Teach me the discipline of diligence so I can build lasting wealth and honor you in everything I do. Remember, wealth isn't about what you can get, it's about who you become through the process. Diligence transforms ordinary efforts into extraordinary results. Chapter 7, Generosity protects and multiplies wealth. One person gives freely, yet gains even more, another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. Proverbs 11:24. Page 1, The Unlikely Gift. Amanda Thompson had always lived modestly. A self-made entrepreneur, she ran a small, successful event planning business in Denver. While many of her peers spent lavishly on luxuries, Amanda stuck to a simple lifestyle. She had learned early on that, while wealth could provide comfort, generosity was the true measure of success. One winter, she received an unexpected call from her friend Michelle, a single mom who had recently lost her job. Michelle had fallen behind on rent and was struggling to buy gifts for her children. Amanda felt a tug in her heart. She remembered the scripture, one person gives freely, yet gains even more, Proverbs 11:24. Without hesitation, Amanda offered to cover Michelle's rent for the next 2 months and also purchased gifts for her children. That act of generosity not only met Michelle's immediate need, but it also opened up a door of opportunity. Later that year, Michelle landed a better-paying job and eventually became a part-time assistant at Amanda's business. Amanda's small act of generosity sowed a seed that blossomed into a deeper business relationship. Page 2, The Principle of Overflowing Generosity. Amanda's story exemplifies the biblical principle that generosity leads to multiplication. Proverbs 11:24 teaches that the one who freely gives is often the one who experiences greater abundance. In contrast, those who withhold or hoard wealth often end up in poverty. Generosity protects and multiplies wealth by establishing a flow of resources. When we give, it keeps the flow open and invites further blessings. This concept is found not only in Scripture but also in many success stories. Jesus himself said, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap." Luke 6:38. While the world may focus on accumulation, the kingdom principle is that giving is a pathway to greater wealth. Page 3, Modern examples of generosity's impact. Consider the story of Chuck Feeney, a billionaire who spent most of his life anonymously donating his wealth. Known as the founder of duty-free shoppers, Feeney became one of the world's most generous philanthropists, giving away more than $8 billion to causes such as education, healthcare, and human rights. But here's the twist: Feeney didn't give away his wealth just for tax breaks or personal gain. He gave with the purpose of making a difference. By doing so, he found that the more he gave, the more opportunities and resources continued to flow into his life. Chuck Feeney's wealth didn't just come from his businesses, it grew exponentially because he gave it away. Similarly, tithing and giving don't just impact the recipients. They cultivate a mindset of abundance in the giver, inviting financial and personal growth. Page 4, The Wealthy Giver and the Reluctant Hoarder. On the flip side, there are examples of people who hoard wealth and end up stagnant or losing it altogether. Bernie Madoff, for instance, became famous for defrauding others in one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in history. Though he amassed billions, his greed and refusal to give back or make ethical decisions led to his downfall. God's economy works differently. Generosity provides protection for wealth. Not only does it have a multiplying effect on the giver's resources, but it also acts as a safeguard, ensuring that prosperity remains. When we use our wealth to bless others, it returns to us in ways we can't imagine. This is the power of living with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. Page 5, Reflection plus Activation. Biblical truth. Generosity isn't just an act, it's a lifestyle. It's a way of inviting God into every aspect of our wealth and prosperity. Through giving, we protect what we have and open ourselves up to even more. Questions to reflect on. How have I seen generosity multiply wealth in my own life or others' lives? What causes or people could I bless with my resources today, no matter how small? Am I more focused on preserving my wealth or using it for greater purpose? Action step. This week, look for one opportunity to give generously. It could be donating to a cause you care about, helping a friend in need, or supporting a local small business. Track the blessings that follow and see how your wealth grows in unexpected ways. Sample prayer. Lord, thank you for blessing me with resources. Teach me to give generously, knowing that my giving reflects your heart. Open doors for me to be a blessing, and multiply what I have to bring glory to you. Remember, generosity is the path to true wealth. It's not about accumulating, it's about multiplying and passing on blessings. When we give, we open the door for God to give back to us in greater measure. Chapter 8, Wealth gained by righteousness endures. The wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. Proverbs 13:22. Page 1, A shift in perspective. Marcus Jackson was a successful real estate developer in Houston, Texas. His company had grown rapidly over the past decade, and he enjoyed the trappings of wealth: luxurious homes, expensive cars, and the best vacations money could buy. However, beneath the surface, Marcus carried a quiet burden. Over the years, he had made questionable decisions in business, including cutting corners on quality and exploiting workers to maximize profit. One day, after a conversation with his longtime mentor, Charles, Marcus began to question his success. "Does this kind of wealth really satisfy?" Charles asked. "You've built an empire, but is it built on righteousness?" Marcus didn't have an answer. But the words haunted him. He realized that though his wealth had grown, it was never truly satisfying. The more he gained, the more he felt like something was missing. Something deep inside knew that his wealth had not come from the right place. Page 2, The Righteousness Principle. The Bible teaches that wealth gained through righteousness is far more enduring than wealth that comes through deceit or injustice. Proverbs 13:22 tells us that the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. The righteous are those who follow God's ways, acting with integrity, honesty, and fairness in their dealings. Unlike ill-gotten gains, which tend to slip through one's fingers, wealth built on righteousness is a lasting treasure. We see this principle clearly in the life of Job, a man who was wealthy and righteous. Even after losing everything, Job's wealth was restored by God because of his righteousness and faithfulness. God's principle is that those who honor him in their work and relationships, who use their resources to bless others, will have their wealth sustained. Page 3, The Consequences of Unrighteous Wealth. As Marcus reflected on his own path, he couldn't ignore the impact of his business practices. Several of his former employees had come forward with complaints about unfair wages and mistreatment. He had built his wealth, but in doing so, he had also caused harm to others. The Bible makes it clear that wealth gained by unjust means doesn't last. Proverbs 10:2 says, "Ill-gotten treasures have no lasting value, but righteousness delivers from death." In modern terms, this might refer to businesses that thrive on exploitation, corruption, or dishonesty. While they might appear successful in the short term, they often face a downfall, whether through legal issues, loss of reputation, or internal collapse. Marcus decided it was time to make a change. He reached out to his former employees and offered restitution, ensuring they were fairly compensated for their work. He also began adjusting his business model to focus on ethical practices, fair wages, transparent dealings, and environmentally sustainable projects. Page 4. Building lasting wealth through righteousness. In today's world, we can see examples of people who have built long-lasting wealth through righteousness and integrity. Patagonia, the outdoor clothing company, is a prime example. Their commitment to sustainable practices and fair trade has not only earned them a loyal customer base but also positioned them as leaders in the industry. Hershey, founded by Milton Hershey, was built on a commitment to community. Hershey invested his fortune into a school for underprivileged children, ensuring that the wealth he created benefited others. Ben & Jerry's has maintained its commitment to social justice and environmental sustainability, which has translated into not only business success but also a lasting brand legacy. These companies have not only generated substantial wealth, but their wealth continues to grow because of their righteous foundation, their focus on honoring God and serving people. Page 5. Reflection plus activation. Biblical truth. Wealth gained through righteousness endures because it's built on God's principles of integrity and justice. This wealth is not fleeting, but has lasting value because it aligns with God's purposes. Questions to reflect on. What areas of my life or business need to be realigned with principles of righteousness? Have I made any decisions in my wealth-building journey that were not rooted in honesty or fairness? How can I ensure that my success benefits others and honors God? Action step. This week, evaluate one area of your work or business where integrity can be strengthened. Commit to making a change that ensures you are pursuing wealth in a way that honors others and honors God. Whether it's better treatment of employees or making more ethical choices in investments, take a concrete step towards building wealth that lasts. Sample prayer. Lord, help me to build wealth that honors you. Teach me to be righteous in my dealings, to act with integrity, and to use my resources to bless others. May the wealth I accumulate be a testimony of your faithfulness. Remember, righteousness isn't just a moral choice, it's the foundation of lasting wealth. Wealth gained by righteous means not only endures, it multiplies, becomes a blessing to others, and aligns with God's eternal purposes. Chapter 9. The importance of wisdom in wealth building. The wise store up knowledge, but the mouth of a fool invites ruin. Proverbs 10:14. Page 1. The wisdom of planning ahead. Lena Williams had always been a hard-working woman. After years of working in the tech industry, she decided to branch out and start her own software development company. However, her excitement quickly turned to frustration as she struggled with cash flow issues, employee turnover, and unexpected setbacks. One day, Lena sat down with her mentor, David, a seasoned entrepreneur who had successfully built and sold multiple businesses. Lena, he said, your passion is evident, but you're missing one key element in your approach: wisdom. You can't just work hard. You have to plan, prepare, and seek knowledge at every turn. Lena was confused. She had thought that sheer determination and hustle would be enough to push her through. But David's words stuck with her. As they spoke, she realized that wisdom wasn't just about knowing what to do, it was about knowing when and how to do it. Page 2. The Wisdom Principle. Proverbs 10:14 says, "The wise store up knowledge, but the mouth of a fool invites ruin." Wisdom is the ability to apply knowledge and insight in making decisions. It isn't just about intelligence, it's about using that knowledge to make sound choices that lead to success. We see this principle illustrated in the book of Proverbs throughout the Bible. Wisdom is personified as a woman who cries out in the streets, calling for us to listen, to learn, and to make decisions that align with God's will. Wisdom is practical, it's about making wise choices in the areas of business, finances, relationships, and life. The wisest of all, King Solomon, prayed for wisdom over wealth when offered anything by God, 1 Kings 3:5-14. God granted him not only wisdom but also wealth because Solomon used his wisdom for the good of the people and built his kingdom on godly principles. Page 3. The cost of foolish decisions. Lena had been making decisions without proper research or counsel. She had trusted her gut, but the results weren't adding up. Many entrepreneurs make the same mistake, believing that their instincts alone will lead them to success. But the Bible warns us against this approach. Proverbs 12:15 says, "The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice." Lena had ignored the advice of others, thinking she could figure it out on her own. But wisdom involves seeking counsel from experienced people, doing thorough research, and being open to learning. Without this, the road to success can quickly become a path to failure. David's words came back to her, "You need to seek wisdom." Lena began to look for experts in finance, business strategy, and marketing. She read books, attended seminars, and sought the advice of other successful entrepreneurs. Slowly, she started to see her business turn around as she made wiser, more informed decisions. Page 4. Modern examples of wisdom in action. In today's world, many of the most successful people credit their achievements to the wisdom of learning from others, seeking advice, and making careful decisions. Some examples include Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks, built his company by learning from others in the coffee industry, analyzing market trends, and making careful decisions based on customer insights and employee welfare. His wisdom transformed Starbucks from a small chain to a global coffee empire. Sheryl Sandberg, CEO of Facebook, is known for her wisdom in leadership and growth. She built Facebook's monetization strategy and navigated its growth through difficult challenges, all while maintaining a focus on corporate values and employee engagement. Elon Musk, while known for his bold moves and ambitious goals, is also someone who surrounds himself with experts and has a strategic mind that applies wisdom to future possibilities, whether it's electric vehicles or space travel. These leaders didn't just rely on their own brilliance, they sought wisdom from others, learned from their mistakes, and planned for the long term. Page 5. Reflection plus activation. Biblical truth. Wisdom is a crucial component of wealth building because it helps you make smart, informed decisions that lead to long-term success. It's not about instant gratification but about prudent planning, seeking counsel, and applying knowledge in ways that honor God. Questions to reflect on. Where have I been rushing in my decisions and ignoring the need for wisdom? What areas of my life could benefit from seeking advice from others or doing more research? Am I applying biblical wisdom in my business and financial decisions? Action step. Identify one major decision you are currently facing, whether in business, finance, or life. Take the time this week to seek wisdom. Talk to an expert, read a book on the subject, or spend time in prayer asking for God's guidance. Sample prayer. Lord, I ask for your wisdom in every decision I make. Help me to learn from others, seek counsel, and make choices that are aligned with your will. May your wisdom guide me toward lasting success and prosperity. Remember, wisdom doesn't just come from knowing what to do, it comes from applying biblical principles and seeking sound advice. It leads to smart decisions and ultimately to lasting wealth. Chapter 10. Trusting God as the ultimate provider. But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth. Deuteronomy 8:18. Page 1. A turning point in faith. Caleb Turner was always driven. He had started his career as a financial analyst, climbing the corporate ladder to become one of the youngest vice presidents at a large investment firm. But as his wealth and career grew, something else seemed to grow too: a sense of emptiness. His personal life was falling apart. He was working long hours, neglecting his family, and feeling more disconnected from his faith than ever. One night, after another heated argument with his wife, Caleb sat alone, overwhelmed by the pressure and stress. As he opened his Bible, his eyes fell on Deuteronomy 8:18, but remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth. The words hit Caleb like a lightning bolt. All this time, he had been relying on his own strength, intellect, and ambition to build his wealth. He had forgotten that his ability to produce wealth came from God's provision. Caleb knew that this realization was a turning point, one that would change how he viewed success, wealth, and his life moving forward. Page 2. The Provider's Promise. God's promise in Deuteronomy 8:18 is simple yet profound. Wealth, along with the ability to create it, comes from God. This isn't just about the money or the material things, it's about the skills, opportunities, and guidance that allow us to build wealth in the first place. God is the ultimate provider, and everything we have is a gift from Him. We see examples throughout the Bible of God's provision. In the wilderness, God provided manna for the Israelites, ensuring they had food when they needed it. In the New Testament, Jesus tells His disciples not to worry about their material needs, reminding them that God takes care of the birds of the air and the lilies of the field, Matthew 6:25-34. This doesn't mean that we are passive in our wealth-building efforts. God gives us the ability to create wealth through our skills, knowledge, and opportunities. But it's essential to acknowledge that it all comes from Him and to align our goals with His purpose. Page 3. The danger of self-sufficiency. For many of us, the temptation to rely on our own abilities can be strong. Caleb, like so many others, had fallen into the trap of believing that success was solely the result of his hard work, intelligence, and dedication. But in doing so, he had become self-sufficient, believing that he alone was responsible for his prosperity. The Bible warns us about this mindset. In Proverbs 3:5-6, it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." When we trust in our own abilities without acknowledging God's role in our success, we can easily lose sight of what truly matters. Caleb realized that while he had worked hard, his ability to produce wealth and succeed in his career had come from God's grace. He made a commitment to stop relying solely on his own understanding and to trust God with his business decisions, family life, and wealth-building journey. Page 4. Trusting God in business and finances. In today's world, where wealth building often comes with a mindset of competition, greed, and personal ambition, it can be easy to forget the importance of trusting in God's provision. However, many successful entrepreneurs and business leaders acknowledge that their prosperity came from God's guidance and timing. John D. Rockefeller, one of the wealthiest individuals in history, attributed his success to his faith in God. He believed that his wealth was a blessing from God, and he made it a point to give back to society through his charitable foundations. Dave Ramsey, a financial expert, built his brand on the principle of trusting God with one's finances. He teaches that wealth building is not just about accumulating money but about being good stewards of the resources God has provided. Travis Kalanick, the co-founder of Uber, faced several ups and downs in his entrepreneurial journey. Through it all, he recognized that opportunities and success were not just about his hustle but also about divine timing and favor. These leaders understand that wealth is not just a matter of personal effort, it's about trusting God's plan and allowing Him to provide the opportunities, resources, and guidance needed to achieve success. Page 5. Reflection plus activation. Biblical truth. True wealth comes from God, and He is the ultimate provider of both the ability to create wealth and the opportunities to do so. When we acknowledge God's role in our prosperity and trust Him in our decisions, we align our wealth-building journey with His eternal purposes. Questions to reflect on. Have I been relying too much on my own strength and ability to build wealth? How can I start trusting God more in my financial and business decisions? Am I using the wealth I've been entrusted with to serve others and honor God's purpose? Action step. This week, take time to pray over your finances and business decisions. Acknowledge that God is the ultimate provider and ask for His wisdom and guidance in every area of your life. If possible, share a portion of your wealth with someone in need, as a reminder of God's provision and generosity. Sample prayer. Lord, I thank You for the wealth and opportunities You have provided me. I acknowledge that every good thing comes from You. Help me to trust You more, to lean not on my own understanding, and to use my resources to honor You. Guide me in my business and financial decisions, and may my success always reflect Your goodness. Remember, God is the ultimate provider. He gives us the ability to create wealth, and when we trust Him and align our goals with His will, we experience not only financial success but also true fulfillment.